Trauma is not what happens to you, it's what happens inside you. That's a good thing, by the way.
I'm a big fan of Gabor Maté. I really like Gabor Maté. I've been listening to him for years. I like the way he thinks and talks about subjects in psychology that are full of givens and assumptions that he frequently challenges. Now, he doesn't talk specifically about narcissism, but what he speaks of speaks to narcissism. One of the things that Gabor comes back to frequently as far as trauma goes is to remind us that despite the way we would commonly think about it, and despite the structure of trauma, trauma and the resultant PTSD and CPTSD isn't really about what's happened in the past. So I have an Instagram account, and usually once or twice a week, I'll do questions. I'll say to people in the stories, like, you can ask me a question, and then I'll do a short 30-second video clip answering people's questions. And every single time I do that, there'll be one question that pertains to this perception that trauma is about what happened in the past. So people ask questions like, how can I recover from trauma if I can't recover my repressed memories? Or should I see a hypnotist to recover repressed memories so that I can recover from trauma? And my answer is always something around the challenge of, well, who gave you the idea that you have to access memories? Like, so in some way, accessing the memories is going to be curative of trauma. Trauma is now in the body. Trauma is a now experience. It's not a past experience. And that led me to a stock phrase that I don't use anymore, but I used to use it a lot in like 2016, 2017. Barring having a time machine, therapy is all we have, because otherwise, really, you need a time machine. What people are trying to do frequently is to go back in time. We can't do that. Well, with regressive hypnotherapy, we can revisit the memories. Memories are so fallible. I mean, there are things that are questionable and non-replicable. There's a replication crisis within psychology, but there are a few things that have been highly replicable. And inducing false memories in sober, high IQ, mentally stable people has been shown time and again to be extraordinarily easy. Memory, we don't have a memory that's accurately storing information the way a computer would say. We do have memories. Some of our memories are accurate, but it's way easier to trick memory than you would think. And I personally don't think you need to remember trauma. I don't think you need to remember a traumatic event. It's not a part of my schedule unless the client comes to me and says, I have a memory that is pestering me. I have a memory that I can't overcome. I'm interested in the source of patterns of behavior. So I will ask people about their childhoods and their upbringing. But the idea that the trauma is locked in the memory, as Gabor Maté says, I think is false. And it's not a particularly useful idea. It's in the body and it's in the present. If it was really in the past, what can you do?
If trauma is the fact that you were abused as a child, you will never be a person who wasn't abused as a child. But if trauma is what happened inside you, the wound that you sustained, the meaning you made of it, the way you then came to believe certain things about yourself or the world or other people. And if trauma was that disconnection from the authentic self, well, guess what? Good news. That can be restored at any moment.
Without a time machine, how do you go back and undo the past? You can't. Is there anything intrinsically healing about reliving with accuracy a traumatic memory? No, it's not healing at all. I would imagine it would be re-traumatizing. If we had a virtual reality machine that allowed you to accurately relive a traumatic memory blow by blow with precision, or perhaps even literally blow by blow, I think all that would do is re-traumatize the client. I don't think that would be in and of itself, as I just described it, useful. There are exposure therapy methods that you could apply to that within that virtual reality context that would work. And there are experimentations that have already been done that back that up. But that's a subject for another day. I mentioned narcissism. So there is this question that comes up time and again when we look at the formation of narcissistic personality disorder in childhood. It's another question I frequently get on the Instagram stories, which is you have two children raised essentially in the same environment. Why does one develop NPD and another one in essentially the same environment not develop NPD? So coming back to Gabor Maté's principle, it's not really what happened to you in the past, in this timeline that is illusory. It's false. There's no living past. The past is a fallible, twisted, warped, perceptually filtered memory. There's only now. There's only the very present moment. There's no past. There's no future. There really is only now. There's no need then to be, going back into the past. So how would we say that there is this differentiation between two people raised inside of the same environment? One develops narcissism, the other one doesn't. We have to look at this thing. It's not about what happened to you. It's not about the past. The point of power is not located in an illusory timeline. The point of power is in the present. What's the point of power? It's how you're responding to it. I don't mean this in like a 90s self-help guru way where you're like, oh, you have to take control and you have to choose how you respond, because you can't always choose how you respond to things. Things happen and you may have a certain response and it is literally outside of your locus of control how you're responding to that. My point is not that, and my point would be the same as Gabor Maté's point. What counts is not what happened in the past. What counts is how your body and your brain is responding to it now. And part of that you're in control of, and part of that you're not in control of. That's what we focus on. So if you did therapy or a counseling session or coaching session with me, and we were talking about PTSD, CPTSD, and childhood trauma, that's what I want to know about. I want to know how you're dealing with it today. I want to know what your coping mechanisms, what your strategies, what your structures are today. And that's far more interesting and useful for me, and way more likely to lead to healing than going through a blow-by-blow account of you trying to remember what happened to you in your past. So this answers the narcissism question. Why does one child, or it answers the narcissism question to a degree. Why does one child develop NPD in that environment and the other child doesn't? Because it's not the environment that counts. It's the child's response to the environment that's actually, because NPD is a response. Narcissistic personality disorder absolutely is a post-traumatic stress response. It's a complex post-traumatic stress response. That's a defense against an attack. NPD does not formulate in a pH-neutral environment. NPD can only formulate in a very poorly boundaried, very emotionally volatile, very abusive environment where the child's boundaries are consistently under attack. So why would one child develop NPD and another one wouldn't in the same environment? Because it's not only the environment that's creating the NPD, it's the child's response to the NPD. Another element to this that is worth mentioning, as we're on the subject of narcissistic personality disorder, is just because two kids are raised in essentially the same environment, like practically speaking, they have the same parents and they eat at the same dinner table, it doesn't mean that they're being treated the same way. So what can also happen inside of these environments is you can have a golden child and a black sheep. Let's just deal with two children to keep it simple. The black sheep would grow up to become what we would normally call a codependent, perhaps what I would refer to as an echo codependent. So the black sheep can't do right for doing wrong. They have parent or parents who are engaged in splitting. You are the bad object child. Whatever you do, no matter how good it is or how perfect it is or how you excel, it is wrong. That is your function inside of this family unit. We're not taking that function away from you. You're the blame carrier. You're the burden bearer. You're the black sheep. It doesn't matter what you do, you'll be in the wrong for it. Now, the golden child, and in the narcissistic parenting style, splitting strategy, they can't do wrong for doing right. So it doesn't matter how awful they are, if they commit crimes, if they steal, if whatever, everything they do is perfect and everything they do is always right. Which one of those children is being abused, by the way? And this speaks to Gabor Maté's point. Both.
Trauma can also be inflicted not by what happens to you, but what doesn't happen that should happen when your needs aren't met. That can wound as well. Even though you weren't overtly hurt, you were still wounded by not having your essential human needs met.
You would think, well, no, the black sheep is like an emotional dustbin. Being told you're wonderful no matter what you're doing, how could that possibly be considered abuse? What Gabor Maté says is abuse can actually be abuse of a person that can lead to trauma, but it can also be when something is not given to a person that is something they really need. So if you're sat there and I'm not torturing you, but you're in a lot of pain because you have injuries, that will be counted by Amnesty International as torture. If I could give you medical assistance and I don't, that's classed as it's a war crime. But what am I doing? I'm not hurting you. I'm not pulling your toenails out, but I'm not giving you painkillers. I'm not dealing with your wounds. It's classed as torture. It's the withdrawal of medical aid. How does that relate to raising a child who's a golden child? That child needs boundaries. That child needs a structure. That child needs to be told no. That child shouldn't be told that no matter what they do, they're perfect, wonderful, and awesome. They should be given realistic feedback because some of the stuff they do ain't that great. Some of the stuff they're doing is disruptive or naughty or antisocial, and they have to know that. They have to receive that information. That also is, according to what Gabor Maté says, trauma-inducing abuse. You're not giving the child what they need. So narcissists are also the victims of abuse in that sense. I really like Gabor Maté. I highly recommend you check out his stuff. If you like listening, there's a ton of free interviews and a ton of free material all over YouTube. And he's written some pretty awesome books as well. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time and for your attention. And I look forward to speaking to you again very soon. Cheers. Okay, folks, the new course, Unplug from the Matrix of Narcissistic Abuse, is out now. And if you're interested in finding out more about that, please click the link below.